When modern observers look at the Indian caste system, they often see a rigid, inescapable monolith of social stratification. The common assumption is that ancient Indian society was always locked into this exact hierarchy, dictated purely by religious decree from its very inception. To test that assumption, we have to look closely at a specific 900-year window. We will start in the early Vedic period, around 1500 BCE, and track the societal shifts up to the later Iron Age, around 600 BCE. We must first separate two terms that are frequently conflated. At the start of this timeline, we find Varna, a classification based on choice, aptitude, or color. Hundreds of years later, we find the codified reality of Jati, a categorization dictated strictly by birth. The shift from a fluid, merit-based system to a strict hereditary caste system did not happen overnight. It was a gradual, historical mutation. This mutation was driven by the raw economics of the Iron Age, with later textual changes acting as retroactive justifications for a society already in the process of being rewired. We can trace this evolution by cross-referencing three distinct pillars of historical evidence: primary textual analysis, epigraphic inscriptions, and the material culture left behind in the dirt. By establishing this strict chronological timeline, we can strip away modern political lenses. We stop looking at ancient sociology as a mystical anomaly and start analyzing it as an evolving economic mechanism. Between 1500 and 1000 BCE, the early Vedic society was primarily pastoral. The community was broadly organized into three functional groups based on their daily tasks: the Brahma, the Kshatriya, and the Vish. The Rigveda, composed during this era, serves as our primary textual baseline. By examining its verses, we can measure the exact degree of social mobility present in this early society. We find specific records of this occupational flexibility in the 9th Mandala of the Rigveda. A specific verse lays out the author's domestic reality clearly. "I am a poet, my father is a physician, and my mother grinds grain." This network diagram illustrates the socioeconomic structure described in that verse. Three vastly different economic roles, intellectual, medical, and manual labor, exist simultaneously within a single family unit. The choice of occupation was clearly individual. In this era, classification was strictly a matter of karma, the specific actions and labor a person performed, rather than janma, the family they were born into. In a mobile, cattle-herding society, survival dictates that every member performs the task they are best suited for. A rigid, birth-based stratification would have crippled a tribe's labor efficiency in such a fluid environment. To corroborate the texts, we must look at external archaeology to confirm the pastoral, highly mobile nature of these early Vedic tribes. At Bagazkoy, in modern-day Turkey, researchers uncovered a 1400 BCE inscription. This treaty invokes Vedic gods, Indra, Mitra, and Varuna. Their presence in distant Anatolia proves these cultures were highly mobile, nomadic tribes, not isolated urbanites. By 1000 BCE, the society entered the later Vedic period. The tribes began to permanently settle down in the Gangetic Plains, and their fluid social structure slowly began to harden. This shift is mirrored in the texts. A four-tier social division makes its very first appearance in the 10th mandala of the Rigveda, in a hymn known as the Purusha Sukta. The Purusha Sukta introduces a new narrative, the creation of the four distinct Varnas, birthed from the different body parts of a primordial cosmic being. Historiographical and linguistic consensus is clear on this text. The 10th mandala is a later addition, inserted into the Rigveda long after the original core verses were compiled. What originated as a poetic metaphor to explain a newly settled society was gradually codified. Over centuries, these tiers were hardened into strict social law. The religious ideology was retroactively altered to justify a society that was already changing its underlying social organization. This brings us to the core question. If the elite felt compelled to alter the foundational texts to lock in this new hierarchy, what economic pressure forced their hand? Prominent sociologists and historians, including G.S. Gurye and Romila Thapar, have extensively modeled the mechanics behind this shift. Their analysis posits that early Varna was simply an economic division of labor, a practical way to manage tasks and maximize a nomadic tribe's efficiency. That efficiency shifted with the introduction of a new technological variable, the discovery of iron, and the subsequent rise of the painted grayware culture. Looking at this flowchart, we can track the economic mechanism. Heavy iron plows allowed cultivators to clear dense forests and break harder soil, generating agricultural surpluses that pastoral herding could not match. Consistently producing more food than a population requires directly enables rapid population growth, the expansion of trade networks, and, crucially, the concentration of wealth among a small elite. The ruling and priestly classes now controlled immense concentrated resources. They needed a structural mechanism to protect that wealth from the broader laboring class below them. Transforming the fluid Varna system into a strict birth-based hierarchy solved that problem. It created a legal and religious barrier that locked resources at the top and prevented upward social mobility from the bottom. The rigid caste system we recognize today emerged as the structural output of wealth monopolization within a rapidly expanding agrarian economy. This split-screen comparison reveals the original intent of Varna. On the left, the ancient Vedic division of labor. On the right, a modern corporate organizational chart. Both are structures designed to assign roles based on individual aptitude and required tasks. The historical tragedy is the eventual mutation of that practical system into one of inescapable heredity, where a person's role was finalized the moment they were born. The Varna system was a dynamic, evolving economic output. It adapted and hardened in direct response to the material conditions of the people practicing it. A practical division of labor that kept a pastoral society alive was eventually warped by the political and economic forces of a newly settled agrarian reality. It requires us to look at our own modern hierarchies and ask which of our current social structures are actually just the hidden, inevitable outputs of our current economic systems. To truly understand history, we must free it from the assumptions of the present and examine the raw economic gears that actually drive human societies forward.